Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are going to take a look at the final of the 4 figures that were released at the Jurassic World Live Tour, and this one is the Tyrannosaurus Rex, one that I think probably a lot of people were waiting for just because everyone loves a good T-Rex in their life. However, in my opinion, my personal opinion, again, not everyone will share this opinion, I think this is the weakest figure of the bunch and probably one of the ugliest as well. However, I just had to buy it because that's the way I am. I need to own every dinosaur figure that I see all the time. I don't know why, it's just a disease I think at this point. So I had to pick it up, especially if it's Jurassic Park or Jurassic World. I'm always kind of tormented until I do eventually buy the figure. But this one specifically is kind of anorexic looking and the proportions are off heavily, really heavily. But regardless, it still looks pretty cool. It's still part of the Jurassic World collectible line, so it's something that is official Jurassic World merchandise, so I just had to have it. The coloration is definitely very similar to the Jurassic World version over the JP version, but that makes sense because the show is a Jurassic World show, and it also unfortunately has that same similar look to the Rex as it did in Jurassic World itself, where it kind of looks sickly and very thin and kind of unhealthy. So they did do a good job as far as making this actually look like the way it did in the film in a way, but the proportions are off pretty badly. The paint application isn't really that great, but let's go ahead, get up close, we'll take a look at the good, the bad, the ugly, I guess, and we'll figure it all out later. So starting up here at the head sculpt, I will say that the head sculpt does look really, really nice. I think they did a very good job of really capturing the likeness of a Jurassic World Tyrannosaurus Rex, and they definitely hit the nail right on the head as far as that goes. You can see that when it does look forward, the eyes are not facing in the perfect direction. In fact, he kind of looks like he's got a lazy eye on this side, but this eye on the left side of the Rex's head, that one looks pretty good. It's definitely facing the correct direction. The eye paint is a little sloppy, but nothing terrible, I will say. The overall skin texture of the head looks really good for the most part. They've given it kind of a really nice dark brown wash, and then they've included like this light brown that kind of coats the entire body. So again, similar to the other figures, the Triceratops had different variations of gray. The blue Velociraptor figure also had different variations of gray, and then you had the Stegosaurus that had different variations of green. Well, this one's very similarly painted to that, but due to the skin texture being a lot finer, a lot smaller scaling and everything, it doesn't quite shine the way it did on the other ones on this one, but I actually think it looks more realistic due to that reason on this one. You can see that the teeth are painted pretty nicely. They're a very bright white, so a fairly unrealistic color probably. As far as the white goes, he really looks like he does a great job of brushing his teeth, but the inside of the mouth is painted really nicely with a fairly realistic pinkish color, and you can actually see it does appear to have a beautiful gloss in there, which helps to make it shine realistically, which I don't think I really saw that on any of the other figures, so that is definitely a plus as far as the T-Rex goes. I think the eye looks good on this side, aside from the pupil not really facing the right direction. The eye is a little bit sloppily painted, but at least it's placed perfectly within the area that the eye should be, and from a step back you don't really notice it too much. You've got the nostrils up there sculpted really well as well, and then you've got those beautiful scoots that run up along the eyebrow, the ridge of the eyebrow and everything. Really nicely done as far as the skin detail and everything all over the head. Then once we get back here, you can see kind of some of the scars that Rexy was sporting in Jurassic World, and they actually did take the time out to paint the scars specifically. So that is one thing about this that I think is really cool, really awesome touch on the part of this, something I did not expect. I thought maybe the scars would be there, but I did not expect them to actually be painted out. So that definitely is an awesome addition to the figure. And you can see that the skin detailing and everything the whole way down the neck is really nice, beautiful wrinkles and creases in the skin. As we run down the neck, nice saggy skin here in the underside of the throat. Really, really nice sculpt work down here. The sculpt as far as the detailing of the bodies goes is really kind of beautifully done on each and every one of the figures. And that shines through here on this, but there's one thing that you may be noticing right away at this point of the review, and that is how insanely long the neck is on our Rexy, because it is really, really long, much longer than it should be, and that is definitely One of the worst parts of the figure is how long the neck is. I think it throws the whole figure off. You can see it right there. It looks incredibly thin as well, very sickly. I think Rexy's neck looked a little bit too long in the film, but not quite this long, so that's definitely a downside for the figure. On this side, you can again pick up on some of the really nice detailing. You can see a few osteoderms and everything up here on the top of the head as well. Once you run down here into the lower part of the neck, the base of the neck, you can see that it starts to pick up into the shoulder blade here. And again, kind of sticking with the fact that Rexy was sick, you can really see the shoulder blade protruding from the skin. You can also see the rib cage there. So she does definitely look very malnourished in the figure, which is kind of cool, really sticking to the fact that Rexy had been sick and kind of was recovering, I believe, in Jurassic World, and you can really see the spinal column and everything sticking out here of the Rex. So as far as I think accuracy goes when it comes to how she looked in Jurassic World, I think that this is definitely a pretty good interpretation. If the proportions were a little better, it would have definitely been one of the best interpretations, probably the best interpretation of her from that film. You can see a seam here where the arm connects, which is a little bit of a downside, but you've got paint on the nails, which is a huge plus, because we don't get that too often from Mattel, so it's nice to see that here on this figure. And the overall skin texture looks really nice. You can really get an idea of the bone structure throughout the arm as well. Really nice skin texture here throughout the stomach, and like I said, you can see the rib cage, and that dark wash there helps to bring out all that detail really nicely. Once you get back here into the leg, you can really see the hip bone sticking out. Again, she's definitely very thin, kind of sick, so you can see the bone structure in a lot of places of the animal really, really well. You can pick up on some nice muscle tone here in the leg. You've got the kneecap here. Again, another seam where the leg connects. I don't really recall the seams being quite such an issue on a lot of the other figures, but I guess now that I think about it, some of them did have a few iffy seams, like the Stegosaurus and everything did for sure. Once you get down to the feet do turn from being this soft material, right about here in the knee actually, it transitions to a very hard plastic, and you can see that the feet actually look beautiful. Really, really well done. Very nice scoot-like appearance down the toes and the upper part of the foot. Beautifully painted nails. And then you've got the dew claw there, and the dew claw is painted as well. So kudos to them for pulling all that off. The feet and everything look great. Really nice calf muscles as well. And the skin texture in the feet look fantastic, along with the legs all over the place. Really does look great. You can see some of the skin stretching on the body here as the leg is pulling forward, stretching the skin. So they did do a good job as far as paying attention to the way the movement would be displayed in the sculpt. And then as we move out the length of the tail, you can see that the skin texture looks great. Lots of creases and everything, cracks and crevices in the skin, all beautifully brought out with that dark wash as we come out to this very nice curved tail at the end. Again, the tail is nice and soft here at the end. It's not anything that anyone will get hurt with. However, these feet could definitely cause some damage if you buy it for your kids and you decide to start smacking each other with it. We already looked at this side from this point down, but once we get down into the body, you can see that the Rex arms look pretty nice here on this side as well. Beautifully painted nails once again. The seam is still visible over here as to where the arm connected. You can see the rib cage once again, and actually quite a bit of the bone structure in general of the Rex. You can see again these scars are painted here on the body, so that looks really, really cool. Beautiful skin stretching and everything with this leg pulling the skin back. That looks great for sure. You can pick up on a few osteoderms and stuff here and there on the body. Really nice muscle tone here in this thigh. You can see the hip bone up here once again, protruding from the skin as the dinosaur is fairly thin. Beautiful calf muscles right there, and then the foot looks great on this side. I think the foot sculpt might actually be my favorite part of the entire figure. It really just reminds me of that moment in Jurassic Park when the foot kind of comes down into the mud right in front of Alan and Lex as they're trying to get Timmy out of the Explorer. I really think the foot sculpt is beautiful on this. But as you come back up into the body, you can see a few creases here in the skin of the tail. Once again, really nice skin texture as you run out the length of the tail. The tail is the other area that is incredibly off as far as how misproportioned it is. The tail is insanely long, way longer than it should be. And that's one of the biggest problems with this set of figures, I think, was just how long the tail is. The tail length on all of them, except for the Stegosaurus, they were all just way too long. One area I don't like at all is the underside here, because the underside sports this little area of this bright color, and it just looks really ugly. It's just kind of crammed on there. The paint just looks really thick, really just not good. It doesn't look natural. Like, the paint looks everywhere else really well. It looks, for the most part, really quite nicely done. I mean, it's nothing overly flashy, nothing that they spent too much time on, but I think they did a good job overall. But down here, it just looks really, really bad. And you can tell that this was just another area that was already previously painted and then stuck in here and applied, which also helps to make sure that it looks really ugly as well, unfortunately. But if you can get past this, I think the paint application looks pretty decent. One other thing that is a bit of a downside is that the underside of a Jurassic Park or Jurassic World Tyrannosaurus Rex has a very trademark style of scaling on the underside, and they did not capture that here on this figure. So that's another little bit of a downside for the figure. But otherwise, I think it's pretty nice, just really bad when it comes to the proportions and this one area of the stomach. So now that we're a little further back, you can really see now what I'm talking about when it comes to the overall proportions of the figure. The neck is way too long, the tail is way too long, so she really ends up looking quite ridiculous overall, I think. But at the same time, they did do a good job in certain areas, like giving it that very thin and sickly appearance like it did have in Jurassic World. So if you did want to make a Rex that looked like it did in the Jurassic World film, I think this is probably the closest that you're going to get. Maybe with the old limited edition Blu-ray kind of double bookend set that they had, there was a really nice interpretation of the Rex in that. But I think this one might be a little closer to being a little more accurate, aside again from the proportions. As far as a size goes, it is definitely really big. From the head to the tail, you're looking at about 15 inches, pretty much on the dot, or about 38 centimeters. And for a height, the highest point might be around here on the neck, so about 5.5 inches, or about 14 centimeters, somewhere in that range. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, and you can see that as far as like the head size and everything goes, they're pretty close in proportion that way. Even the legs actually look to be fairly close. They almost look really, really close to the way each one looks, very similar to each other. But you can see the tail just causes this Rex to be way longer than the Papo Rex, and a good bit bigger, just also a lot more sickly looking as well. But this should hopefully give you a pretty good idea that the Rex is definitely a larger figure. Unfortunately, it's the most expensive of the bunch as well, costing about $28 when it was in my area. I don't know if the price fluctuates or not, because I've actually seen people getting them a little cheaper at certain areas when the show hits their area. I don't know why I kind of got gypped on prices, but regardless, it was a little more expensive, again, than the others at about $28, but it's still a really cool Jurassic World figure, and quite sizable, which you can see now next to the Papo Rex. So this is the final of the Jurassic World Live Tour exclusive dinosaur figures. There were also a few other things, like 2 different snow cone cups that I got, which were a Triceratops and a Rex head, which I may actually review at some point. I don't really know if anyone is interested in seeing those, but I may get those on here as well, just because they are really, really cool additions to the Jurassic World merchandise collection. But this Rex was the final of this group of dinosaur figures. I was so excited to go to the live tour, but also excited to go to the live tour to get these figures, because I had been kind of seeing people posting images of them for weeks in advance, and I was just beyond excited by the time the show was in my area. So I scooped in right away, grabbed these figures as soon as I got there, and I'm really happy that I did. This Rex specifically, aside from the proportions being off, does look really, really nice, I think, in my opinion. They've done a good job, for the most part, of matching up the color pretty closely to what we saw in Jurassic World. If this were actually repainted, it could look a lot better than it does, because I think this is just kind of like the basic type of a color scheme you could get, because they didn't really put too much work and paint into it. But I think what they did put on is like a basic gist of what the Rex looked like, so they did a fairly good job. I do like that they added in a nice dark wash as well to just give it some paint and color variation, making it at least look a little more realistic than if it were just this one solid color, which is definitely a plus. The eyes are painted pretty decently, but out of all of them, this one had probably the sloppiest paint on the eyes, and the pupil placement wasn't really all that well done. But if we move past that and the bad proportions and that horrible looking underbelly, I think that there are a few surprising aspects about this, like how good of a job they did really matching up the sculpt to look like the film version of the Jurassic World Rex, again looking like it's sick, and also the fact that they included paint on the scars was a really cool touch, really nice, something I did not expect at all. And then you of course have gloss inside the mouth here on this one, helping to make the mouth look pretty realistic. So it's really nice, and at the same time some areas are not so nice. So it's really kind of a 50-50 Rex, but I am definitely happy that I purchased it, really happy now to have it in my collection. And if you are in fact going to the Jurassic World live show, it's definitely worth picking up, just because once the show is over, I would imagine these figures will just kind of disappear, and then the collectability of them will be kind of off the charts. So it's nice to go ahead, purchase them, have them in your collection, just due to the fact that they will be pretty hard to find in the future, and they are really cool figures regardless. So again, if you are going to the Jurassic World show, make sure you stop by the merchandise stand, pick up these incredibly awesome Jurassic World figures as soon as you do. But before you head to the show, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.